Looking for a place to speak your truth? This podcast is on an endless pursuit to build through entrepreneurship, empowerment, and creativity. Through thought-provoking content and a fearlessness to dive into untouched topics with an undeniable dedication to highlighting others who are often overlooked. This is Deep Conversations.
Stay tuned for Deep Conversation Podcast.
Welcome to Deep Conversations Podcast, everybody. I'm your host, Ryan Stewart, and today I am here. I'm blessed to have a family member, here with me to, just show his journey and express, his acting skills. He's an actor. He's from North Carolina. My cousin, Leon Pridgen.
What's going on, Ryan?
How you
Thank
doing?
you. I'm good. I'm good, man. Thank you so much for having me. Glad to be part of some deep conversations.
Yeah. Yeah. So what we're going to do today for the viewers, we're going to talk about Tuskegee Airmen General Benjamin Davis' life, and we're going to talk about what you're doing actually is a one-man show. It's called Watch and Fly.
Ben Davis, Watch and Fly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What we're going to do is, before we do that, I want to start with you, and I want to talk about, can you share some of your upbringing and how it influenced your career choices?
Yeah. Well, like I said, I'm part of the Pridgen Stewart family.
Yeah.
And a lot of my folk are up there in Wilmington, Delaware area. Used to spend a lot of time growing up there. Of course, I lived in New York for a little while. I am an Army brat. My father was a career soldier. And so a lot of my thought process and things that I kind of knew growing up were kind of shaped by the folks that we had. We share an Uncle Robert, and Uncle Robert was part of the first class of Black paratroopers. So military has always kind of been steeped in my family. Born in Aberdeen, Maryland, but like Ryan said, grew up in North Carolina. This is always going to be home, no matter what. When I was living in New York, it was always home. But I always found my path in life, I was always interested in acting and knew about Ben Davis. So it's been a natural tie-in. But got away from sports after middle school, had a program that was at my high school with an educator that was an actress, a working actress, that pretty much gave us a college level education and introduction to performing arts at a high school. And this is back in the time when North Carolina had money for the art and invested in it. And so, but it was a great time and great period, but it was a great structure and foundation for me. A lot of it based in theater, but eventually I branched out into some different things in film and television, that type of thing.
Yeah. And I know your experience in the 82nd Airborne Division.
Yep. My father, well, like I said, going back to Uncle Robert. Uncle Robert was part of what's called the Double Nickels. It was the 555th. It was an all-Black paratrooper unit. Didn't know that was true until the Uncle Robert passed, and they talked about his war record. But my father was a career soldier. He served 24, 25 years, no, 23 and a half years in the service. And his last jump, because he was in the 82nd Airborne Division as well, but he, my brother, and myself were in the 82nd at that time and made his last jump with him. Your Uncle Richard, my cousin, was also in the 82nd. He jumped with my dad several times. So it's always been kind of there in the family. And so that was some of the proudest years of my life, right out of high school, going into the military and getting to grow up pretty quick.
Yeah. So, with this experience with you, being in the Army, in the Air Force, what does it personally mean to you to bring General Benjamin Davis' story to life?
He's a hero of mine, personally. I think he's a hero for a lot of folks, but me specifically. Several years ago, I was working on a project and thought that I may be playing General Davis in a film project. And I knew about him because, like I said, grew up in a military family. So when it comes to the Harlem Hellfighters or the Buffalo Soldiers, knew those stories. Knew about Ben Davis, knew he was the first commander of Red Tails, the Tuskegee Airmen. This is a decorated flying group that never lost a bomber during World War II. and these are a group of men that they didn't think could fly, much less have that success. Um, but when I started doing or thought that something was going to happen with this particular project, the way that I like to work is I want to understand time, period, what's happening with somebody, and do as much research on them as I can. And one thing just kind of led to another, and it kind of kept snowballing and snowballing. And then when I found out this information, I dug for something else. And when I got that, I wanted to dig for something else. And so, through different books, war records, documents, and then through this experience, I've also been able to connect with his family.
Mm.
He didn't have any children, didn't have a foundation, but he had distant family members that I was able to connect with that knew him as a child. And so I was able to get some personal insight as well. So it's been a great experience for me just to kind of explore and dive in and, for me, feel like I'm getting a good understanding of who he was.
Yeah. Can you share any specific stories of that influenced your personal and your professional life?
Uh yeah, one of the biggest influences for me when I was a little kid, and I'm like a good times kid, you know what I'm saying? So I
Yeah.
would I would see good times and JJ and Michael, and I'm like, I don't know how to do it, but I want to get inside that box.
Yeah.
And so I'm trying to figure it out because, I'm on an army base, I'm a kid, and nobody's thinking anything like that. And we came up to Delaware one summer, and Aunt Jackie and
Hmm.
Ricky were involved in theater and doing shows and doing plays, and they happened to be rehearsing a play. And I was watching my cousin, who's 2 years older than me, that I was like, wow, that's all right. They're doing this play, they're rehearsing, all that kind of stuff. And I was just fascinated. I was probably 7 years old. 8 years old, I did my first play as a result of that because I was like, oh, okay, well, it was a class play. And at the time, when you're in third grade, you don't get to audition for stuff. Depending on where you happen to be in class, determines what kind of role that you're going to get in the play.
Yeah.
And I I told the story, but the kid who got the lead role in the play, his name was Steve Necessary. And like I said, I'll never forget his name because he got the lead role. And in third grade,
Yeah.
you don't get to audition for stuff, and so we don't know what talent is or what a kid could do, but they base what your role was on where you kind of stood in the class. And just because I was sitting in the back of the room eating paste and when we were supposed to be doing macaroni projects, didn't mean I could, you know what I'm saying? I mean, hey, hey, we're doing a play. Oh, hey, let
I
me
know.
let me see what that. Yeah, but that was one of the things that stuck with me. It was like, oh, they're not gonna let me do certain things because they just think a certain way because I'm on a different tangent.
Hmm.
I got a different way of understanding and learning, and so, but that was one of the things that I said, okay, maybe want to focus a little bit on school because it seems like these people aren't going to let you do some things without doing something they want you to do,
Yeah.
and so yeah, those are some things that kind of really shaped what I thought about how I could approach this or what things I needed to do for myself, just so other folks would pay attention.
Hmm.
And but yeah, those were the big things real early on that kind of took me down that road of where I wanted to go, what I wanted to do, and what I was going to be able to do based on how people perceive me. So
Hmm. So if you could talk about it, because I know you said you dove really deep into a lot of stuff with his family and all of those
yeah,
things that, you learned some stuff that other people really wouldn't know from the outside, if they're just telling a story. So,
yeah.
um, I guess, I guess what I kind of want to ask is, kind of what initially sparked your interest in General Davis and the Tuskegee Airmen?
Well, like I said, being from a military family, it was just one of those things that we heard. And like I said, I knew Tuskegee Airmen. I heard General Davis's name,
Mhm.
but I never really dug down into it. When this project came about and kind of led me down that path, um, there's a little bit of a physical similarity to Ben Davis. And like I said, the more that I read about him, the more I was trying to, I was just drawn to what that guy was. You know what I'm
Mhm.
saying? Um, you know, what about him could make him that first commander of the Tuskegee Airmen? And one of the big things that I found out, he attended West Point,
Mm.
first person in the 20th century of color to attend West Point. And what that experience was, because he was isolated and different things that were done to him to try and to get him to quit.
Mhm.
And the only thing that they did, and he also comes from a long line of military history. His family is steeped in military history. His father was the first Black general of the United States Army. But all of the things that they had done and what they tried to do to break him just sharpened his metal,
Mm.
and it made him more driven. And he always demanded excellence, not only from himself, but from anybody that was around him and associated with him. He demanded excellence. So it stands to reason that perfect record of not losing a bomber makes sense, because they weren't going to make any mistakes.
Mhm.
If something happened, it wasn't going to be because of what the Tuskegee Airmen were doing. You know, so but yeah, it's just a fascinating man, individual, and his years beyond that, because there's so many different things he did after having served in World War II and rose to the rank of general. And so, it's just amazing story, something that's fascinating. And I tell people all the time, I said, this is just the one that I was drawn to, but
Mhm.
there's so many different stories. And I mean, so many, I can only tell this one, but there are so many amazing men that were able to be part of that training and the excellence that was there and the path that it led for them and throughout their lives.
So, you're doing the one man show,
Yeah,
and you're starting down there in North Carolina with it. Um, and I kind of know, we talked on the phone or whatever, but
yeah.
I I have a feeling that this is going to start spreading, because I think a lot of people need to know these kind of stories. It's
Hmm.
only certain things that we learn. A lot of us, unfortunately, in our culture, a lot of us don't take the time to read,
Yeah,
and sit down
yeah.
and read about these stories. But I do think, what you're doing and getting out this story, I think is going to shine another light on the excellence that we have,
Mm.
and the intelligence that we have. Like you said, the first his father was the first was black.
General.
Yeah, so it's
Hmm.
like
First Black
in
general.
in those times, and everything that they're doing to Ben Davis, that I mean, to get somebody to quit. I mean, these are
Yeah.
probably, these are behind the scene things that nobody knows, and the mental that it takes to deal with those things because you want to, you know, prove yourself. So, for me, can you describe any key scenes or elements in the Ben Davis Watch and Fly that highlights those pivotal moments in his life?
Oh yeah, certainly. The well, like I said, the thing about Ben Jr., he had this father that was bigger than life.
Hmm.
Because, like I said, mind you, his father became a general in the United States Army, but his father enlisted in the Army in 1898, which is 36 years removed from slavery. So it kind of tells you what a father and an imprint can have on a child by being present and having that thumb on them to say, I'm demanding excellence, which in turn makes him demand excellence. Um, his father, when he was really young, one of the things that had a huge imprint on him was seeing planes for the first time. He had an uncle that took him out to Bowling Field, and this is in the DC area. And he got to watch barnstormers fly in and out. And was so excited by what he was seeing and the tricks they were doing, all the kind of stuff that, and this is in the play. But from that, when his father came back from Europe, he told his dad he had this great experience. I want you to take me back, please. And just begged with his father. And his father agreed. Now, we're talking early 1900s, 1916, 1917, something like that, and seeing these planes. And his father decided to take him back, but spent $5.
Hmm.
Now, if you think about it, and this is 1926, I'm sorry, 1926, but $5 in 1926,
A
not
lot.
like $5 a day.
Yeah.
$5 a day can't get you a hamburger,
Yeah.
right? Um, but he made this investment because his dad was trying to figure out what was going to be the motivating thing for Ben and Junior and what was going to get him focused in life and give him some direction. So he spent $5, but it wasn't just $5 to ride in the plane. It was his father looking way out into the future
Hmm.
and seeing airplanes being a part of his son's life. And he got to take his first plane ride and sit in there and feel what it was like while the plane and the propellers roared and rumbled and the feelings that he had inside, which planted a seed for him that he knew that at the end of that plane ride, he already made a career choice for life. He was going to be a pilot in some sort, didn't know how. And in 1926, in 1930s, there was no path in the United States for a black man to become a pilot
Hmm.
because it just wasn't heard of. It wasn't a job that was acceptable for people of color. So it was an amazing time, an amazing imprint on his life that kind of helped shape the direction of where he wanted to go and what he wanted to do. So
Now, when you look at his story and what you just explained about his father, do you sometimes do you feel like with the systematic racism, they may have seen a story like that, and many stories around that how much a father can impact a child's life. So, do you think with the systematic racism and they seen those things, it's like you find ways to keep the father out of the house to, to like I mean, because when you look at it, Ben Davis is, his that experience of being on a plane and seeing his father and remembering those things and that him
mhm,
to follow those follow his lead. That's
mhm.
you know a lot of times now when you look at this generation, they don't have those leaders to follow. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think that we also live in a society that usually wants to highlight those fathers that are absent
Hmm.
versus the ones that are present. And the thing is, my circle is strange, I guess, because everybody that I kind of run with and kick it with, they are fathers that have been present and have an imprint on the lives of the kids.
Hmm.
Um, and one thing that I always say about this, as it relates to the play, even being a father doesn't necessarily mean you always have a great relationship with a mother, or it doesn't necessarily mean you're in the house. But that situation should never override the fact that you're still that father and you still have an opportunity to make an imprint. Sometimes we deal with our own stuff and our different issues and different things that don't allow us to be what we need to be for maybe our particular child. But like I said, his father, Ben's father, was in a military that wouldn't let him command white troops in the United States. So a lot of times he found himself overseas. Well, when he was overseas, that's when Ben would either be with his grandparents or some other family members. So, but even when his father wasn't present, he was always doing things because he thought that this was going to help shape his son.
Hmm.
Hey, you go and hang out with Uncle Lewis and y'all are at the farm that he has. I'm going to send you something so you have responsibility. I'm going to send you a burro to take care of, to raise, because I need you to understand how you take care of things, how I'm planting seeds of responsibility. But those are the kind of things that he did when he couldn't touch his son. He touched him in other ways to let him know that he was. So every time he looked at that burro, he's thinking about his dad. and understanding that that means something. And sometimes when you don't have a father that's present, there's a grandfather, there's an uncle, there's an older cousin that can take care of or at least try to impart some things. But it's not always up to mothers to pour into children. And I'm talking about sons and daughters, but it's a responsibility as a man to pour into the young people so that your daughter, your niece, your sister, they can see what a man's supposed to look like and how they're supposed to treat you. And to a son to understand that as a man, this is what I'm supposed to do, how I'm supposed to conduct myself. And like I said, the situation may not always be perfect. You may not be from a two-parent household,
Mm-hmm.
but that doesn't negate the fact that you can have an imprint on somebody and make a difference. You
Mm-hmm.
never know who you gave birth to.
Mm. So how do you think that was deep? How do you think General Davis's legacy continues to impact the military and the society today?
Oh, well, this is one of the things that we also cover in the play.
Mm-hmm.
General Davis Sr., like I said, he joined the Army 36 years removed from slavery, military that wasn't integrated. And he always believed that it needed to be integrated. That's an imprint that he left on his son. So a lot of the work that Ben Davis Jr. did was about how do we integrate these military units so that your job is not based on your color, but your job is based on your skill level.
Mm.
And so that's the biggest imprint. I mean, there's so many different things that he had done within the military. There's so many different things he did outside of the military. But one of the biggest things that he had done was he fought for integration within the military, within the United States Air Force, because the Army Air Corps was within the United States Army. It became its own division or own military branch, which became the United States Air Force. When he moved from the Air Force, from the Army to the Air Force, it was when integration was beginning to happen, and that was one of the biggest things that he fought for and was eventually recognized for. But that is his biggest legacy, which was a tribute to his father, because that's what his father believed.
How has how has working on this project, the play and learning about his life, how has that changed your perspective on the challenges that are faced by Black soldiers and leaders in the military?
Hmm. I don't know if it changed it. You know what I'm saying? Because I like I said, my father was in the military. I was in the military.
Mm.
It was a thing that I saw and understood. I think that there's always room and continuing fighting for the respect or to be Colin Powell, but I understood that the excellence, that level of performance led them to be able to be in those positions. And my thought has always been, uh, like I said, you shouldn't be limited. Your skill set should not be limited to what your color is.
Mm-hmm.
It should be enhanced by what your abilities are. And we still are in a society that sometimes, you still have to do stuff where you feel like you got to be twice as good to get half as much. It moves gradually. There are things that change and move us and propel us forward. There are some things now that seem like they want to pull you back or digress or not allow you to do certain things unless you fit a certain mold or certain box or a certain way of speaking. Um, but the fact that we have a country that's founded on individuals from many different places that make the society move forward. And all of that is always going to be an asset. It should never feel as if it's a detriment or a hindrance to. And there are some things that we may or may not always accept or agree on or whatever, but the tolerance for it as a society should always be present. You know, this is going in a whole different direction, but like let's say for instance, I hear different people who have comments and things to say about the LGBTQ society.
Mm-hmm.
Now, um, I'm not part of that community.
Mm-hmm.
I know a number of people that are part of the community. I'm very supportive of my friends, and whatever their walk is, I'm going to be able to, for me, I have to be accepting. It's interesting to me when I have people of color who have no tolerance for folks that happen to be different. And I'm saying, well, that's cool. That's your choice, the way you have to live. But you have to also remember, you know what? You're not too far away from being that unaccepted part of society. And you got some forces that you sometimes seem like you might be willing to vote for that are trying to take you back to something different.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and I know some people have gotten complacent because they got a couple of different things here, and I've got that, and I got, X number of dollars in the bank, and I got this car that I'm driving, my house is bad. All of that is great. But don't get too comfortable with that and lose sight of who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, you know, you got people sitting on courts that are willing to help take you back. And I'm like, bruh, you might want to check your, because you know what I'm saying? You look across the bed and somebody might be coming for you in your situation.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So, you don't necessarily have to agree with everything, but being able to have acceptance and tolerance, I want people to be able to accept me.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Not necessarily by being in a box of what you like, but just because this is who I am and this is what I present and this is how I carry myself and what have you. Um, so that's just that's just my thing. I think that there's a level of tolerance that can be had. Don't necessarily that it never means that you have to agree with it.
Mm-hmm.
All it means is that my mind is open enough to understand that you have a perspective. Now, by the same token, I hope that your mind is open enough to understand that I have a perspective.
Mm-hmm. Now, speaking on that, what personal that really kind of led me to my next question. What personal qualities and characteristics made General Davis an effective leader and trailblazer?
Oh, uh, grit, determination, the demand for excellence. In some cases, the demand for excellence may hit you wrong
Mm,
because you feel like I'm not getting the just due or I'm not getting a fair shake. You know, this is going in another direction. Not everybody could play with Jordan.
you ain't lying.
You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? And some people that did play with Jordan got rubbed the wrong way. But at the end of the day, you won championships.
Mm-hmm.
There was a level of excellence that was being demanded. That's General Davis. There may be some people that along the way didn't necessarily, because he may not have been the friendliest guy,
Mm-hmm.
but he couldn't be because of the responsibility that he had. And in that, in order for us to get to where we need to go, I can't have you being a lagging piece of this. If you can't get up here with us, then you can't get up.
Mm-hmm.
We got to keep moving.
Yep.
And that's where he was. And that's, so like I said, his determination, his will to stick to things, see things through. And then he was also a bit of a visionary as well. Throughout his military career, the different things that he could do. This isn't in part of the play, but I say interesting facts. This guy, you got to understand. They're the Blue Angels that are part of the Navy that are their acrobatic flying group. The Air Force has a group which is called the Thunderbirds.
Mm,
Check the record. Ben Davis is responsible for that. The black man. It's like amazing things that he had done, that he had accomplished. But like I said, you don't hear that publicized. You don't get that out there in the world. One of my favorite stories that I had to cut out of the play just because of timing
mm-hmm.
was about Ben Davis at West Point. Now, like I said, he suffered abuses and they never talked to him for 4 years. Didn't want to have anything to do with no conversations. At West Point, you have to participate in sports. You have to do something, some kind of extracurricular activity, whether it's a team sport, football, if it's a baseball team, if it's rowing, if it's whatever, and individual sports. Well, Ben had a liking and a penchant for boxing. They graded him for their participation. Uh, he got all A's in his class. Now, as you know, boxing is a one-man sport. When he would go to have his matches, he didn't have anybody in his corner. No cut man, no, you know what I'm saying?
Wow.
But he was fighting against these other students that never had anything to do with him. And so it was an opportunity to try and get the best grade possible by exercising your pugilistic skills, which meant dominate your opponent. And he never lost. You're not talking to me, huh? Oh, got you.
You ain't got to talk to me now.
I don't want to hear that. No, no, anybody over here? No, I got it.
Yeah. So looking at this story, right, and
Yeah.
all the things that you've learned about him, and then all the things that you've experienced throughout your life, what have you learned about yourself?
Um, through this play,
Mm-hmm.
oh, this play, I mean, there's been so many different processes, you know, like, oh, hey, I designed my own website for it. Okay, well, that's something I never thought I would be doing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I don't do a whole lot on social media, but I've been getting a little bit more proficient trying to get information out just so that people know, hey, this is what I'm doing with this play. After I finish this little run, we'll see where we are. Hopefully we're going to be able to get out on the road and do some more things, more places, more events. Um, but I'm going to expand my social media skills because
Mm-hmm.
I got an Instagram page, but I don't do anything with it. I get,
Yeah.
so some of those things that it taught me that, you know, and especially like right now, my situation, what really kind of pushed this, um, last year about this time, and I've done some films and done some different projects and some things and all of that. But that's always when you audition, you have to go in, somebody else gives you validation, says, yes, we'll hire you, etc. I'm not at the point where somebody just says, hey, call Leon, we want him for this role.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
so I'm grinding. And last year there was the strike that was happening. There was a writer strike. There was an actor strike, and I was getting frustrated because obviously there was no work coming in, nothing to do. Um, and I was like, well, maybe I should just go strictly on this banking thing and let that be whatever I'm doing, and kind of ride this thing out, whatever. Um, but I sat down and had a long conversation uh, with my father, our father, if you believe your father,
Yeah.
but trying to decide what it is I needed to do for myself, and not just what it's about Leon or we need to showcase and do this, that, or the other, but how can I do some meaningful work as an actor that means something instead of, I've done some work that I know is meaningful to different parts of society.
Mhm.
For me, maybe not as much, but something that I believed in. And um, you know, ministers are called to minister. I've never been called for that, even though I was named after a minister, and people thought that was the calling.
Yeah.
Like, no, 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 God's gonna tell you when it's time, and I have a different ministry. Is what I do with my work as an actor,
Mm-hmm.
because it's a way of being able to reach out and touch people. And by these stories or this particular story, it allows me to have a much greater reach than me. Um, but 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 the response that I got was, you got a story that I've given you that you've had for years, decades. And I've been researching more and more. And I had started writing this play 7 years ago. But what came to me as clear as day was, you got a play finish it. Don't wait for somebody else to do it. Do that. He's your hero. Pay honor to him. And that's what because anything that I do and anything that you see is not me, it's outside of me. And especially with this story with Ben Davis, the first time I performed it was on Martin Luther King Day. And something that I had a conversation with God, and I had a conversation with Ben Davis, and I asked him to just use me as a vehicle, a vessel, and just let whatever these words were that I've been working on and trying to put together to effectively speak for him, to let that just take over and let that come out. And it was a beautiful thing because like I said, the best compliment that I had was from people who had known me for years that said they didn't even see me on stage. They immediately saw Ben Davis. So the effective thing, the way that my ministry is able to reach out is through these characters, these individuals, but specifically this man whose story, like I said, I don't know how many days I got left, but while I got him, I'm not going to let his story get lost.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, the one thing that I know about life and legacy and your name, as whatever your name is and wherever it comes from, we have a finite period of time that we get to carry this name. It may be something to live up to, it may be something to live down to, but it is a name. And what are you going to do with it while you have it? And so for this finite period of time, the way I'm utilizing my name is to make sure that I step up on the shoulders of this man that is so great and elevate his story. Because, like I said, it wasn't something I got in the history books. It wasn't something I got in class. I got a glossing overview, and I don't even know if I got it in class because I know I got it at the house because that name came up. I know that was part of the conversation. So I'm just trying to put this name back in some houses.
It's something you say that because a lot of these interviews that I do, I'm talking with business owners and things in our communities. And every last one of them, you just said it too. Some of the most, I guess, the information that we needed or need, we never learned in the classroom.
Yeah.
We kind of had to learn it through trial and error in our lives, and as we move through life, it makes you thinking about Ben Davis. If if we had to go through some of the stuff, what was it like? It's like it makes you think, what was it like for him? I mean, because it was so much more in the open. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
There was no, hiding anything of how we felt about you. Like you said, it's, the things that they did just to keep them back. It's like, it's crazy to me.
Yeah. It just reminded me of, so I had an interesting conversation with an educator on the collegiate level who came to see the show. Now, one of the things that happens in the play, Ben is at West Point and he hears that they're having a meeting in the bathroom in what they call the sinks. And he gets up and he goes to the bathroom. He wasn't actually supposed to be part of the meeting. It's all the cadets saying, what are we going to do about this nigga? They're going to get him out of here and not to say a single word to this boy. Well, the educator mentioned to me, because particularly if I was like, you're going to look to take this to college campuses and things of that nature, you may have to lose the word nigga because there's a heightened level of sensitivity around language, and especially when you're talking about traditional colleges, that you may not be able to say that. And I said, that's an interesting point. Yeah, going to colleges could be, a payday, but the integrity of what I'm doing and what that impact had on him, I don't know if I can take that word out because somebody's sensitive on a college campus. But my question to him was, if they're sensitive about that today, how do you think he felt there living that experience? I'm not going to cheapen that to make sure it placates somebody else. This is what happened. That's the thing. I'm not saying that it's your fault. I'm not blaming you. I'm not casting down. All I'm saying to you, here's the fact. This is what happened. This is what was said. This is what you saw. They stormed the Capitol. Anyway,
Yeah.
you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
We saw that.
Yeah.
That was the experience.
Yeah.
I can't change that narrative to make it a little bit easier for you to digest today. This is what happened. Slavery happened. It wasn't a great training ground for
No.
trades.
No.
It was slavery.
And I don't understand when we're going through our experiences
Mhm.
and we're explaining our experiences, why I never understood why we have to dilute our experience to make somebody else feel comfortable. We can't do that.
Right.
It's
Right.
and then to say you might need to take that word out. No, they need to hear that.
Exactly. Exactly. You know, I need to make sure that you're comfortable about understanding the discomfort that I suffer.
Hmm.
Why is that? Anytime you have a wound, until you can openly let it air out, discuss it, it won't fully heal.
Mm-mm.
Airing it out and fully discussing it doesn't mean I'm trying to give you a wound. All I'm trying to do is heal, just like you would try to heal. Why am I not entitled to that same benefit?
Hmm. I'm I again, like I said in the beginning, this show needs to be. I want you to give the dates, so people can know
Sure.
some of these dates that's they got coming up.
Yeah, right now I've got tonight is the debut of what we hope will be the beginning of this ongoing tour.
Hmm.
Uh, it is in Statesville, North Carolina. Today's July the 11th. The time is at 7 p.m. 7th or the 11th through the 13th, all 7 p.m. shows. There's a Sunday matinee, which is at 3 o'clock. The following week, we are at the Mooresville Performing Arts Center. One of the reasons this is also where I did the show back in January. The Performing Arts Center is very dear to me because I used to be on the school board here in my community, served it for a number of years. One of the big things that we did was pass a bond for a new performing arts center, which is state of the art. And it actually has my name on that build. Well, one of the names on the front of the building.
Wow.
So it's like I said, the things that you do try to be impactful because and this is digressing, but another thing that's always been important to me has been education. Being on the school board, the different things that I've done, but our school district at one point, well, it is still, but at one point was the only public school district that was completely digital. We had a digital transformation. And the difference that we saw, and one of the reasons why I was involved with it, we had a high school graduation rate for African American students in 2000. This is going back some years, but in 2005, we had an African American graduation rate of 47%. Digital transformation, having the use of digital tools, all of our students had all the educational content on a laptop that we provided through Apple. And one textbook would at the time would cost you about $87. One textbook for one class. We could get all the educational content for every class for $37.
Man.
But it provided this for all students. And we saw the graduation rate. We had a watershed high a few years after that in 2013, where the graduation rate for African American students was 98.8%. So the impact of what that had done in my community is one of the things that I'm proudest of because it changed the trajectory of life for kids who no longer were hanging out on the corner, but were thinking about college. thinking about the military, thinking about the workforce and how can I enter, but having some kind of skills. And we were able to do that and provide that for those kids. And it's still a fight, still a struggle, especially after the
Mm-hmm.
pandemic, and gaps in groups, deficiency gaps with students of color and that kind of thing. That's something that you're always fighting for and fighting to try and narrow and close. But what we have done in a public school district where we educate everybody, we get you to school, we get you lunch, and we make sure that you got a way home. But while we got you, we're going to give you some skills and a skill set to understand that there's a world out there we want you to prepare for, instead of waiting to figure out maybe we'll guess what we're going to do when we get done. So,
Mm. I got one more question for you. I can't tell you
yeah.
how thankful I am for you to, to be on this podcast and just share your story and Ben Davis's story because just like his, like, just what you were just talking about, I think you're very impactful. You know what I mean? Just the way you speak is very it has purpose. You know what I mean? It's you
Yeah.
mean you mean what you say, and then the kids that you're dealing with, that you're helping them along the way. But the one question I have for you, that I usually like asking all my guests because I think it gives a real in-depth look at the person. But what, from you being a child to you now, what have you learned about yourself mentally and spiritually?
Hmm. I one thing I may may not always hit everything the right way, but I
Mm,
know that I'm a child of God.
mm,
So that's something that I know. Um, uh, I know that I taken some hits, but I never stop.
mm, mm,
Um, you know, the one I may not be able to make the biggest difference, but I can try and do something to impact something to make some difference.
mm,
And that's everybody. Everybody can make some difference. The one thing that I've understood and through this life and this journey, and particularly when I talk to kids, is I want to make sure that they understand no matter where you came from, no matter who your mom or dad was or what they may or may not have been, that you individually have a destiny, and it's a destiny of greatness,
mm.
no matter what. You have a destiny of greatness. It's just up to you whether or not you want to pursue it. Because the one thing that I want people to get and understand, and I even have to reinforce it for myself, because uh, the people that don't believe in you, they never will if you don't believe in you. And so, even with this thing that I'm doing, and I was having a conversation with somebody just the other day, and I was saying that, this is something that I'm doing myself. This is something that I'm financing myself. There's not a corporate sponsor, although that would be nice. But but there's not a corporate sponsor. There's not a philanthropist or somebody that I've gone to or a group or an organization that I'm saying, hey, I need you to do this to help me to tell this story. I'm telling the story because that's what God told me to do. And so I'm putting myself out there and hoping that people will find it and get it and understand it, um, because it is so much bigger than just even Ben and what that is. Because, like I said, they looked for something every day to be better,
Mhm.
to challenge themselves. I'm constantly chasing that man that that I'm supposed to be, the man that I see down the road 10 years from now. I'm trying to get to him and I'm trying to live up to him because that's how I've shaped my life. It's, because we have to find things for ourselves that help give us some purpose. And it may not always be like, hey, I got 9 Oscars. Different things come with those Oscars.
Mhm.
You know, I may not have you know, 50 platinum albums that I produced and whatever. But the things that come with that.
Mm-hmm.
And and sometimes, not trying to be caught up in who Leon is. That's why I love these other characters because I'm still trying to figure it out. I'm still trying to get started. I'm still trying to land something, you know, but I'm still pursuing something that I think that is far greater than myself.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm going to tell somebody to go out there and find that, I can't just go to the bank and say, okay, yeah, we're good. I'm gonna go ahead and take that check and and make sure that the 401k is for whatever. That's great. We always want to have the stability and financial security, but this is my shot. This theater thing, what I'm trying to do and trying to tour this show, that is a Goliath.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sitting over here with my bag. They got 5 rocks.
Yeah,
I'm trying to get out there like David and do what I can do. I'm swinging after giants.
man. I'm listening to you throughout this whole interview. It's we're family, but I can resonate a lot more. You know what I mean? Because the things that you talk about is those are the same things that I think about. You know what I mean? Just
Yeah,
to get out
yeah,
there and make a difference. So it's I'm listening to you as you talk and you see me smiling because I'm like it's almost like I'm listening to myself. You know what I mean? So
right, right, right.
as not even as family as men, I want you. This is one of the reasons why I started the podcast because I enjoy highlighting people. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I don't want it to be you know about me. I've always
mhm,
been about I don't like all the shining
right.
stuff on me. I always want it to be about me, and I genuinely get excited to see people win. And then the for a story like this to be talked about, I think it's necessary, and I'm definitely going to be talking about it. I'm definitely going to be trying to push it as much as I can because
I
you know
appreciate that.
what you're doing is I think it's huge. You know what I mean? It's a story that somebody has. I think his impact, is still his inspiration is still way relevant today. So,
Yeah,
I cousin Leon, I'm so thankful for you to jump on this podcast with me today and share your story and Ben's story. I appreciate you.
yeah. No, I am grateful and honored to be here, and thank you for taking the time and finding some interest in it. Like I said, I know that like there's certain things that I try to do and the way that I try to live and all of that, but I'll tell you in a minute. There's not that much about me that's that special. The fact that I get opportunities to highlight some other people
Hmm.
that um because like I said, the whole thing, it's really I'm not asking people to come and support me or come see me. You know, I've seen a lot of different one man shows and the way that people do certain things and the way what that show is about, whether they're trying to work through something or understand something or whatever. And for me, you know, my one man show is about somebody who I believe really needs to be talked about.
Hmm.
And and anytime that I get a chance and an opportunity to do any portion of the play and talk about it, it allows me to highlight and honor a true hero,
Hmm.
and that's what I do. Uh, I love to be able to be buried inside a character because it's never going to be about me or my brand or my name or this, that, and the other. What is it that this person needs, and how can I do that justice?
Hmm. I appreciate you, cousin Leon, for jumping on here with me, man.
Brian, yeah, man, you don't even have to thank me, man. It's an honor. It's an honor.
Yeah, you too, baby.